Hello everyone and welcome back to another time-lapse quick build. In this one we're just going to be putting together a extremely small, very tiny hover tank that I should be able to use in the early bit of the adventure. I don't know, I wanted to use hover tanks as early as literally possible. So, I'm going to be putting together the cheapest little hover tank that I can here. It's not going to be pretty, it's not going to be expensive. It's not going to be very durable, but it should be able to deal with basic deepwater guard stuff. I'm honestly hoping that it'll be cheap enough, so I've envisioned this scenario wherein a dangerous craft spawns first in the adventure mode, and I get wrecked. But one of the advantages I see to having this thing is that I could just kind of drop it and run, and possibly escape by potentially sacrificing this thing. So that is one thing I'm doing with this. Now, other than that, yeah. Now, I end up redoing smaller parts of this. One of the tricks to building small is getting everything that you want in a compact space without it being terrible. So, when you're building small, you usually end up rebuilding the same thing 3 or 4 times before it ends up where you actually want it to be. Now you might notice that once again I'm using this trick with radiators on the engine instead of just going for a straight up exhaust. Exhausts provide a single point that infrared things can focus on. So if you do a radiator, it'll just kind of focus, it'll have like a weak lock on the whole vehicle, whereas if you do an exhaust, it'll have a hard lock on wherever your exhaust is. So by putting the engine... by overcooling the engine and having it done with radiators, this thing shouldn't emit too much heat. It should be pretty hard to see. It's another stealth thing. Now the thing's made of metal and it's got a larger cross section, so it's probably going to be pretty easy to see with radar. But hopefully, because it's flying and it should be a little hard to hit, I might have it stay kind of far away. We'll see what I can do with these guns here. Again, nothing too fancy. Nothing too fancy. We're not getting fancy yet. We're saving the fancy stuff for when we get into the adventure mode and start dealing with advanced vehicles. Putting the rotating thrusters in the back instead of in the front. Just nothing but guns in the front. So a lot of my larger hover tanks have like 4 engine pods, and what's really nice about that is that they can usually remain airborne even if they lose a whole pod. So I'm trying out this 3-pod thing for smaller designs because I think a fourth engine not only costs a lot more resource and potentially more engine power, but these things are going to go down in one hit anyway. And so I'm wondering if I can save heat signature and save cross section and save resources and make neater looking small craft just by going for this 3-pod instead of 4-pod. A tripod, if you will, design. I'm putting nothing but guns in the front because those guns are actually kind of durable, and generally speaking, you don't get hit dead center. So what I'm hoping is that the 2 most durable parts of this craft is the left gun and the right gun. So by putting that front and center and having a little bit of detection squished in between the 2 of them, I'm honestly hoping that just the massive guns will shield the AI compartment. Now, as you can probably imagine, anything that can hit this can knock it out of the sky. So it's not overly durable. It might last a little while against actual straight up 50 calibers, but the idea here is that it will probably stay at range and be rather fast and just evade fire for as long as it can whilst returning fire. One of the biggest advantages of sub-vehicles, the reason I'm going this route, is that they can be in 2 positions. So if you're getting chased by something that's fast, something that relies on being close up, and you drop a sub-vehicle, then the enemy craft makes the decision between whether it's chasing you or whether it's chasing the sub-vehicle. So if a white flare ship comes bearing down on us, and we drop this thing, then one of 2 things happens. The white flare ship goes after this thing, and we're perfectly safe, or the white flare ship continues going after us, but this thing gets to just shoot away at the ship. So I did have one person reach out to me on Discord and ask if I would do a tutorial on hover tanks, And I think what I'll do is when I build the first major hover tank, so these are like quick builds, just tiny little sub vehicles in them spawning. I'm planning on building a carrier that launches a couple of large and advanced hover tanks. I think what I'll do is when I start building those hover tanks, I will go into a lot more detail and show specifically the parts where I actually make it hover and make it control and test out the controls, just to show how that's working. So I can do that later. What you're seeing right here is something's going wrong with the spin block, and I think I placed the spin block wrong because it is flipping out all over the place. So yeah, we end up replacing that spin block and moving on. And speaking of tutorials, AIs are something that took me a long time to learn. A lot of the people I know that I've tried to get into this game have taken one look at the AI and just said, nope. And so probably what I'll also be doing during the adventure mode and during the larger builds is explaining the AI. It's the sort of thing where it really makes sense when you put it in a little bit of context, and it makes sense when you see it 3 or 4 times. Seeing one example of it, you're just kind of like, what in the hell am I looking at? So that's generally most people's response. Once you can make a functional AI, you can start fiddling with all the settings, and then you see what they actually do. And it goes from being words on a paper to something that actually makes sense. Well, words on a paper, words on your computer screen, rather. But yeah, and I think that kind of goes for everything. When I make a gun that I actually think is good, I'll take the time to sort of review it and explain a little bit how it works, and talk about balancing recoil and cooldown, and talk about the shell design and stuff like that. But this, I could probably make a better shell if I tried for this vehicle. I could make a longer shell that did fancier things, or was just better at doing what it do. But the purpose of this was to throw something together really quick that I could fabricate right out the start of the gate in the adventure mode. So yeah. Anyway, speaking of the adventure mode, we're going to be starting that soon. I'm probably going to have the first video of that up later today, actually. So keep your eye out for that. And consider doing me a favor. So the YouTube channel is pretty small, and the reason I'm uploading stuff on YouTube right now is basically because I saved up some money, quit my job, and started a YouTube channel to see if this could go anywhere. Now, I say all that because the YouTube channel is kind of on a time window to eventually be successful. So the reason I say all that is, if you know other people who are interested in From the Depths, please consider sharing the video to them. Or you have people who you're trying to get into From the Depths, please consider sharing videos to them. If we can get the channel to a solid number of subscribers, then I can dedicate more time to this, and I'd love to do that. So if you guys want to see more From the Depths, try to help out the channel, please consider leaving likes and comments and all that, but mainly shares. It's a small YouTube channel, so the best thing that you can do is share it. I know there's a rule for no self-promoting on the subreddit, so if I put something up, it'll just get taken down, which I've never quite understood. That rule's on a lot of subreddits where you're not allowed to self-promote, and I've always found that curious, because if someone draws a piece of art relative to a Reddit and then posts it, that's self-promotion. But no one treats it that way. And then someone else is like, hey, I made a YouTube video, and they're like, get out of here, that's self-promotion. And you're like, well, okay. Anyway, that's enough of that rant. But yeah, started the adventure mode by the time I'm finishing this recording, and it's gonna be a good one. Anyway, just doing a last little bit of modifications. I end up adding these jets just to help it keep its distance. It was trying to turn around in order to flee because it didn't have enough backwards propulsion, and sometimes the AI gets confused like that. So I just gave it some backwards propulsion. it ended up being more expensive than I wanted it to be. It ended up having like 4 more jets than I wanted it to have. Just 3 small jets, potentially 4, but it ended up with a lot more than that. That being said, it does have the ability to strafe. It does have the ability to retreat. It can maintain its distance pretty well, and it's not going to get hit by any crams or really small APS or short-range missiles. It probably has a massive infrared signature thanks to all the jets and all the power that it uses, but honestly, I think it's alright. Anyway, I've been Zakarga, this has been fun, and I'll see you soon, probably later today, with the first episode of the adventure mode. Gonna be taking that one slow. No time lapses there. Probably skips for the big, for the spaces of in between where not much happens. But no, we're not just gonna time lapse the whole thing. We're gonna go as it go. And yeah, I'll see you there.